Today is going to be an unplugged episode of the Cliff Ravenscraft Show. No audio branding at the front, and an apology right here at the beginning for the sound of my voice. I am recording this on Sunday, January 25th, 2026 at 12:24 in the afternoon. And I am now officially 1 week post PodFest 2026. And it was such an incredible experience. This episode is designed to be more like an audio journal format. Now, a couple of days ago, I went into my journal and reflected a great deal about what I've been experiencing over the last several weeks, and especially how it all culminated into this PodFest 2026 experience, and then where I am 1 week later. And there's a lot of insight that's come from that amount of self-reflection. I'm not going to read that entire journal entry for you. It would take about 4 or 5 hours worth of audio. I had a lot to share. By the way, I'm going to attempt to not edit this, but also I'm going to attempt to not cough as well. So if I do find myself coughing, I may mark the file. Go ahead. Okay, I'm going to edit this part out. Hold on. Okay, I'm back. So, audio journal. I have a little bit of an outline in front of me because my mind is not thinking straightly. I've not been feeling well. And I'll start there. Let me just share with you how things had been going. So I've been sharing over the past several weeks about the decision to bring back Podcast Answer Man out of retirement, my strategy for content production. I'm excited about all of those things. I talked about bringing back podcasting A to Z. And I must say, looking back, hindsight is 2020, that was not the best decision. It was not well thought out in advance, but I'm glad I made the decision to do it. I'm glad I put out all of those calls to action the way that I did in all of the content that I've created over the last several weeks. And then I'm glad that I had the experience at PodFest that reminded me, maybe that wasn't the right product to bring out of retirement right out of the gate. And I'll explain more about that because it's later down in my outline. But I do want to share that during all this time frame, there's about 6 weeks from the time I decided to bring back Podcast Answer Man, relaunch Podcasting A to Z. And during that time frame, not only was there a large number of cogs in the wheel of the machinery that needed to be turned behind the scenes, and boy, was I filled with passion and zeal and excitement to do all of those things. So much so that I recognized it was only for a season, but it was a season where I was getting up at 4:30 in the morning and I was working until about 5:30, 6:30, 7:30 in the evening. And, that was totally doable, except for the fact that out of the blue, there was some holiday stuff that happened right around Christmas time. Family was over. There were several people who were not feeling well, lots of coughing in the air. And by the time they had left, and within about 24 to 36 hours of them leaving, I myself had developed either a very bad cold or a very light case of the flu. And it kind of knocked me out. But with that being said, I still was so passionate about what I was doing. I tried to squeeze an hour or two of productivity into my weekday and here and there, but I would recognize that my body's telling me I need to rest. And so I would give in to my body's need for rest, and I would go and take a nap for 2 to 3 hours, and I might come back and try to eke out another 45 minutes to an hour and 15 minutes of productivity, and then say, yep, I'm going to go back and lay down on the couch again. And that went on for a couple of days, and then, eventually I was feeling a little bit better, and thankfully, before it was time to go to PodFest, to head toward Orlando, Florida. About 3 days before I left, it seemed that almost all of that had been worked out of my system. There was just that slight tickle in my chest of a cough that was wanting to present itself. I'm not sure if you experienced this, but for me, I've had a history in the past where I'd have this bronchial situation, this bronchitis that would follow a short-term illness such as that. And it was almost completely gone. And I hesitated. I thought about taking my Mucinex with me to PodFest, taking that to Orlando. I'm like, no, I think I've kicked this. I think if I kind of just chill today and I'm traveling and I take it easy, I think I'm good. And well, I did get to PodFest and I had some incredible experiences there. Again, I'm going to go into the PodFest experience later down in my outline as well, but I'm starting off just with the overall story, the narrative part of my journey over the last couple of weeks of just not feeling great as far as physically. So I go to PodFest. I have lots of energy. Things are really good. I am speaking clearly, but the more I'm engaging in talking with people, and I'm not just talking with people. I talk with people. I talk to and with people with passion, with full presence, with full energy. I give of myself to others in conversation. And so after every one of those conversations, it's kind of like I found myself going, catch your breath, Cliff, and it's almost as though that little cough is wanting to just come out. It's like, hey, cough. Force yourself to just cough and cough and cough and let it go. And I just know that if I do that, it just causes more of irritation down there. And I'm like, I really should have taken that cough suppressant Mucinex with me and I wouldn't have this. But I'd go relax a little bit and then I would go re-engage with people. Again, at this point, I'm fairly confident. I would say almost certain that there's nothing I've got going on that is anything other than just this bronchial thing. However, it is wintertime. It's January. It's a big conference. Excuse me. Clearing my throat here. It is January. And there are lots of people at this event that are full-blown coughing, sneezing, and it's clear they have sore throats and everything. And well, by the final day of the event, I recognize that, wow, I'm starting to feel a little bit of that what do you call it? Soreness in the throat again. It's like, oh, wow, this feels just like it did the first day when those family members left during the holidays. And I'm like, oh no, is this starting over again? And then immediately I'm having flashbacks in my mind. We're at the final night party. So it's on the third day of the event. There's this DJ party. So the music's real loud and I'm gathered in a group of people and there's the people who are screaming at each other. I mean, they're talking to each other. They're talking to me and we're talking to each other in a group, but it's happening in a way that is, in essence, screaming. So if there was no music, if you were to just completely cut the power and there was no music being amplified, you would just hear people screaming over top of what would then be silence. But it was screaming people and spittle coming out of people's mouths. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm sitting here in a spray of spittle of people who are coughing and sneezing and who have been exchanging all the stuff, right? Anyway, yeah, so somewhere along the days of the events at PodFest, I picked up another round of whatever it is, a pretty significant cold. I don't know if it's if it's a flu bug or whatever. But anyway, I came home, got home late Sunday evening, and it has now been one full week. And I have been working all week this week on about, I would say, somewhere between 30% to 70% of my normal energy levels. And with lots of things to do. The first thing that I will share with you is that I can't remember. I'm not going to go through and document, but what I will say is there was only one day this week that I got up at 4, that I felt well enough to get up at 4:30 in the morning and start my day. Most of the other days I slept in until about 7 a.m., 8 a.m., and I think one day 9 a.m. And for anybody that knows me, that's sleeping in late. So, I was doing that intentionally. And by the way, each of those nights, going to bed around 6:30, 7 o'clock. So I'm sleeping somewhat almost 12 hours a night. And throughout all of this work week, there were several naps taken to kind of just rest in between. So I had this situation first thing Monday morning. I went like, okay, there are so many things to do. I had met hundreds, and that's not an exaggeration. It's not hyperbole. I met hundreds of new people I've never met before. Now, many of those people had known me previously, but it was the first time I'm meeting them and or hearing of them. These are people who, in many cases, have never emailed me before, commented to me before, but I mean, I met hundreds of them, and some of them had never heard of me before. So I took as many selfies as I possibly could, stuffed as many business cards as I possibly could. And my idea is that when I get home, I'm going to take the time to pull out every selfie and create an entry in my CRM, my client relationship management software, custom CRM that I built. I'm going to take the selfie I took with them. I'm going to go find them on LinkedIn. I'm going to research them, find out what their podcast is. I'm going to subscribe to them. I'm going to do the same with all of these business cards. I'm going to match it up. I'm going to start reaching out and building rapport and relationship with them. Those who have a fascinating podcasting journey, I think I'm going to invite them to What Are You Creating podcast, have some conversations where I get to know each of these people. One of the ideas that has occurred to me that over all of my years of doing these podcast conferences, there's just been far too many people that I've met where they come up to me and they say, Cliff, it's so good to see you. You know, you've been such an inspiration to me. And I'm like, oh, it's so good to meet you. And the number of times when I say just that passing phrase, it's so good to meet you, it's like, oh, we've met before. A couple of times, actually. We've talked a couple different times at Social Media Marketing World or this or PodCamp. Gosh, I can't even say it. Podcast Movement, and or the Platform Conference in Dallas, Texas, or the Platform Conference in Colorado Springs. And so all these people that I've met, and I tried to train. I'm still working on training myself to never say it's nice to meet you. Instead, it's good to see you. But anyway, one of the things that I would like to know if it's possible, and I'd like to dream that it's possible, but I'd like to know if it's possible. I'm going to attempt to try to do some things. And one of the things that I wanted to do was take these people that I know who have told me, I've met them several times in the past. I somewhat vaguely remember the conversation when it's brought back up. I recognize some of the faces, but man, I'm not able to immediately put a name to it. And some of these faces, I feel that I really should know them because of how deeply they know me and how deeply we're both connected to mutual acquaintances. And so I'm just going to out myself and tell you there's a woman, her name is Katie Horner, and I recognize her face. But prior to PodFest, I had not yet taken the time to commit her name to memory and match it with her face and to know exactly who she is and what she's creating in the world, what she's doing in the world. I only knew that I knew this person. I knew that we've connected before. I know that we've had face-to-face conversation before. I know she's told me about who she is and what she's done before, but I have no recollection of any of the details other than I recognize your face. And now I'm sitting here having a conversation with you one-on-one, and I feel so awkward that I don't recall any of those details. And so this is, I go to these events and there are oftentimes thousands of people at these events. And especially if it's a podcasting event where a good percentage of the people have known me and they're coming up and saying, Cliff, I've been listening to you for years and here's my story. And that's happening one conversation. Sometimes it's 3 to 5 people in a circle at a row are telling me this. And by the time I walk away from that circle, if you were to quiz me and say, what were the first names of any of the 5 people that you just spoke to, I might not have the answer to that question. And I'm trying to solve for that. What do I do? How can I improve this? So one of my ideas was that I was going to come home from PodFest and I was going to take all these selfies and I'm going to put them in and I'm going to put them in a follow-up and I'm going to go, if they have a podcast, I'm going to go subscribe to their podcasts and I'm going to set follow-up dates and I'm going to find them on social media and go and each time somebody in my CRM comes up, it's like, oh, it's Katie Horner that's popping up in my CRM today. Let me go check out her most recent episode of her podcast. Let me go see what she's been posting about the National Christian Association of Professional Speakers. I wonder what she's got going on there. Hey, maybe it's time for me now to reach out to her and invite her to an episode of What Are You Creating? Maybe if I have a 30-minute to 60-minute conversation with Katie Horner and I've been following up with her, that the next time or any time I see her at events in moving forward, I know exactly that's Katie. I know what's going on in her world and I can ask her relevant follow-up questions. And I want to be able to do this with Natasha Tynes, and I want to be able to do this with Dr. Brad Miller also, although I knew Dr. Brad Miller. But Terry Brock, for example, I've met Terry and he and I have crossed paths before, but this was the first time I walked away. Like, I know if I see Terry Brock moving forward, I will know who he is. And I'm just trying to drive more of that connection. So my idea was, gosh, it's going to be a bit, but I want to get a few hundred people logged into my CRM. And I had all week this week, Monday through Friday. I had thought that, maybe since I didn't get as much done this week that I thought I would through the work week, that I'm going to work all day on Saturday. Yeah, you know what I did? I took a 4.5-hour midday nap yesterday. I just was not feeling great. But so far in my CRM, I will tell you, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. 14 people, an entire 7 days. And so far I have 14 of those hundreds of people logged into my CRM. To say that I did not make as much progress as I had hoped is quite an understatement. But there was something even more pressing Monday morning when I woke up than getting started on that project. You see, Monday morning happened to be January 19th. And the following Monday morning would have been that, like, if I projected 1 week out, there's only 1 week until January 26th. Now, if you'd been listening to my content closely, at the end, I've been doing some calls to action for the return of podcasting A to Z. I'm going to take a drink. The only thing is, so far, nobody had signed up for podcasting A to Z. That's not shocking to me. I had not done any real true emails, social media pushes, or reaching out to ask specific people that I think that I'm not going to edit myself. I'm just going to let that roll and go. So I'm not in a place where I have identified people who are the perfect fit exactly for podcasting A to Z that I'm going to reach out to and say, hey, you mentioned this. I'd like to personally invite you to Podcasting A to Z. That's how I filled all of those seats in the past. I had not yet discerned who those people are. And in some ways, I don't know what was going through my mind. I'm like, okay, I'm going to choose a start date, the launch date for Podcasting A to Z, that will be the week after I get back from PodFest Expo. I don't know why I thought that was a good idea, but certainly I had no way of knowing that 2 weeks before going through PodFest, I'd have about approximately 1 full week of dealing with a very severe cold, possible slight case of the flu. And I also had no idea that immediately upon my return from PodFest Expo, I'd also experience another full week of a very severe cold and possible light case of the flu. Who knows what's been going on, but I had no idea that it would be coming. And so while I did get a lot of content creation, while I did get a lot of relationship building, while I did get a lot of buzz around the return, some exposure, while I did get invited to speak at PodFest Expo, while I did make hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of connections that took place last week that are going to make insanely awesome things happen and possible in the months and years ahead. There's so much I could share. Excuse me. But yeah, it's just, but the thing is that nobody had signed up yet for Podcasting A to Z. And I had an option. Am I going to try to live up to my energy levels? Do I have enough energy levels projected for the week ahead? This past Monday, January 19th. I'm not feeling great at all. I already had today's episode of the Cliff Ravenscraft Show. It was pre-recorded before I left. That's great. This past Friday's podcast Answer Man went out. That's fine. But I need to do an episode this week for Podcast Answer Man. That's easy. I'm just going to release the recording of my talk from PodFest Expo. I'm going to just simply record an intro and a call to action at the end of that talk, and that's going to be pretty easy. Not a lot of energy. It's like, okay. By the way, I ended up getting that done, and my voice was really raspy at the beginning and end of that episode. But it went out, and it was a great episode. If you want to hear my talk from PodFest Expo, it's episode number 482, Why You Should Consider Creating a Separate Podcast with Only 5 to 10 Episodes. And the opening line is, what if the most powerful podcast you ever create is not a show that you produce an episode for every week for years, but instead is a podcast you intentionally decide to put an end to before you ever record your first episode? If you want to hear that, podcastanswerman.com and look for episode number 482. Anyway, so I'm like, okay, that's going to be totally doable. I'm also going to need to record an episode of the Cliff Ravenscraft Show before Monday, January 26th. And well, here I am the day before that day. And I'm recording it this afternoon because this is the best my voice has sounded since then. It's also the most energy I've had since then. It's the best I've felt since then. And even today, I'm about 75, maybe 80% of my energy levels. So I'm like, okay, with all of that, the question I then had is like, okay, Podcasting A to Z requires a lot of updating of the original tutorials that were assigned. In fact, pretty much all of them I want to refresh and renew. And because of how I felt before and all of the other things that were the machinery to get things relaunched, I did not get any of those. And so my thinking was, I'll at least get week 1 assignments, week 1's videos updated and processed and put out in the week between coming back from PodFest Expo and the launch of Podcasting A to Z. Except that was the thought when I chose the date 6 weeks ago. Well, on Monday morning, it became quite clear that's likely not going to happen. And also, one other big, huge, giant thing leaped out at me. I had connected with hundreds of people at PodFest Expo that already know me, who have, in many cases, been listening to me all the way back to 2006, 2007. Many of them started around 2012, 2014, and certainly some of them as early as the last couple of years. Hundreds of them. They all had one thing in common. They already had a podcast. So the primary CTA of Podcasting A to Z is don't have a podcast? I will personally walk you through all of the technical details of getting your podcast launched. Well, I just met hundreds of people who are potential clients who would not immediately identify Podcasting A to Z, a group study program designed to help you launch your first podcast, as an ideal fit for how to work with me. But it became very clear there are a number of those people, especially having heard my talk at Podcast Movement, would definitely benefit from working with me either one-on-one on their podcast/business strategy, also business-related mindset stuff, and or they would benefit greatly from being in a mastermind group with other entrepreneurs who are also podcasters looking to expand their message further out into the world. It became clear that those are the two things that would resonate most with the return of Podcast Answer Man, whereas Podcasting A to Z, there are some people that I met who were on the fence getting ready to launch a podcast, but that was a very small number of people that I connected with at PodFest Expo. And most of those people had no idea who I am. And even then, there wasn't enough of a establishment of relationship where within 1 week, they were going to make a decision to pay $2,000 to go through a group training program called Podcasting A to Z. And even if one or two people said yes over the course of the 7 days of this past week, the reality is it would have been a group coaching program with 2 or 3 people, or one person, or I would have nobody. So back on Monday, I decided, you know what? I'm going to put off Podcasting A to Z right now. And I'm going to immediately go in and update the offer and just say that there's no spots available. And so if you go over to, as of right now, and this will change at some point, but if you click register now, it's basically going to tell you that there are no spots available. And it's not telling me that because I'm logged in. So if I go over to Podcasting A to Z, I'm looking for the language that I chose. It says, I will be announcing a new session within the next few weeks. If you would like to be notified before registration opens to the public, email me at cliff@cliffravenscraft.com, and I'll make sure that you're on the list. And so I wanted that to be the first thing that I did Monday morning so that nobody would actually sign up, and therefore then I only have one person. And I had already decided that if I only had 1, 2, or 3 people signed up for Podcasting A to Z, I would have reached out to them, told them what was going on, and took them on as one-on-one coaching clients. But this way, I didn't have to do that. I just said, if you are interested in being put on a waiting list for the next announced date, email me. Well, guess what happened? I did get an email this week, and I'm going to read that to you. Let me just do a search. The subject line was interested in the next A to Z. And this came in on Tuesday, January 20th, which, by the way, happened to have been my birthday. It says, hi, Cliff. You and I have chatted a few times. We met live twice. First at a meetup in San Diego in conjunction with Social Media Marketing World. Gosh, probably 2015-ish. Time flies. Stephanie and your kids were there. It was a pizza place, and Pat Flynn was there too. Then, second, we took a picture together at the 2020 Social Media Marketing World, or possibly 2019. I'm going to go dig that out. Anyway, I am very, in all capital letters, interested in the next A to Z. I have 3 podcasts, all 3 on a little hiatus, although that's changing next week. My oldest launched back in February 2013. And let's see, I'm going to leave out identifying names here, or details here. Formerly something wealth. When I launched, I was coaching mostly direct sales / network marketers on social selling and online practices, way before it was cool. Ha ha. Then I launched the Such and Such podcast, as I am one of those, and my husband is now retired. This is a fun project, and I'm literally the only one in this industry, and I'd love to figure out how to monetize it for travel, resort stays, reviews, etc. Finally, I have a Such and Such topic podcast, which is focusing on such and food / nutrition, personal care and home cleaning products, environment, and all this other stuff. I love all 3, and I want to focus as you are, 1 scheduled episode per week. This is my primary focus, so I have plenty of time, energy, and focus. All 3 are also on YouTube, and I love doing video. I don't need as much technical help as brainstorming, groupthink, and accountability. Now think about that. I don't need as much technical help. And really that is the crux of the podcasting A to Z offer, is that I'm going to help you overcome all of the technical hurdles. And so this is somebody who doesn't need help launching a podcast. This is somebody who's got 3 podcasts that they've produced. I went and looked at all 3 of them. She's had lots of episodes, so she does not need any technical help at all. She's just looking for somebody to brainstorm with. She likes the idea of having group think and the accountability that comes with telling a group of people what I've done and coming back and reporting whether or not I did it or not. She says, I've been a little all over the map trying to figure myself out. I suffer from multipreneur syndrome, and yet I do believe I can pull them all together and monetize each and feed my addictive travel habit. I'd love to create brand deals and partnerships with my Such and Such podcast for sure. I loved your recent interview with Laura McClellan. I've had her on my show a number of years back, so please add me to your wait list and let me know if you have any thoughts or suggestions as I wait it out. I appreciate you. I followed you since 2013. I'm on your Cliff Ravenscraft email list, but I'm not on the Podcast Answer Man list, I don't think. By the way, just real quickly, nobody's on the podcasting list yet because I haven't yet relaunched it. But anyway, I feel like I've watched your kids grow up. And then I wrote back and I said to her, hey, your mention of the meetup with Pat Flynn and that he and I had co-hosted back in 2013 at the pizza place, brought back so many memories. I dug out some photos and it was fun to see my kids in those photos interacting with the community. And I said, you're absolutely right. You have watched my kids grown up because they were kids back then and they're adults now. This led me down the path of seeing how our paths have crossed over the years. In March of 2014, you left me a 5-star rating and review saying Cliff delivers content consistently, a combination of fun and learning. He shows how to have a good time with your show and still delivers valuable information that keeps me coming back. Thanks, Cliff. And then I said, thank you for those kind words. In August of 2014, you reached out to me about my closing keynote. You said, hey, Cliff, great job. Would you share your 4th way to avoid imposter syndrome? Here's what I have so far. And I shared with you those 4 tips on overcoming imposter syndrome. And then I see that we have had a few more exchanges via comments and emails over the years. And basically what I did is I just went and reviewed and I found the meetup photos that this person and I had taken together. And I attached them to this. And I said, you know what? You said that you don't need as much technical help as much as brainstorming, groupthink, and accountability. And I specialize in business strategy and mindset areas. And I believe that it could meet the needs that you're expressing. I'd love to jump on a 30-minute call to discuss what a custom coaching package might look for you. I think it would be a better fit than podcasting A to Z. Well, we got on a call on, let's see here, I think it was Thursday. Yep, it was Thursday afternoon. I was spent. I had already done my podcast Answer Man production. I had just done a 90-minute coaching call with an existing client, and it was the very end of the day. But I jumped on this call with this individual and just to hear what was going on in her mind and to hear what she genuinely needed. And then as we were talking, I recognized that she really was seeking out the group think aspect of it. And I was thinking, you know what you're looking for, I think would be something that would be most met, that your needs would be most met through the Next Level Mastermind group that I had hosted from November 2017, and I shut down back in the end of June of last year. And she said to me, Cliff, I've been thinking about your mastermind group for years. I never reached out to you about it, but it's been on my mind for years. I said, well, it's one of my goals is to get that relaunched. And I said, this is what this group is. This is the investment. And she says, I would definitely be interested. I told her it might be you and I for the first few weeks. That's how it was when I first launched it back in November 2017. But as you and I get started, I will be announcing this to other people. And it became so clear to me that as I was meeting all of these people that I had not realized were in my community, they were just out there. And now that I've brought back Podcast Answer Man, how it's reinvigorated that connection. And I'm like, yeah, I see this Next Level Mastermind as the answer to the immediate next step for them if they want to work with me in the same kind of capacity. I've got several podcasts. I have ideas. I'm a little bit all over the place when it comes to focus and business and strategy. And I'd really like to be in a group. I'd like to participate with you. And so this person and I are going to be relaunching the Next Level Mastermind starting in the first week in February. And I immediately reached out to a dear friend of mine who was in the mastermind group for 6.5 years and asked him if he wanted to get back in. That conversation is happening right now, and I've got details there that I won't share, but some interesting opportunities down the road, not too far down the road. But anyway, this individual and I are relaunching the Next Level Mastermind. And I got off that call, and I will tell you that I should be like super excited. And I know that that part of me that's really, really, really excited about the comeback of the Next Level Mastermind. And it's very clearly the right offer for the people who are re-engaging with the Podcast Answer Man brand. It makes perfect sense. And yet, as soon as I got off that call with this individual, I immediately went upstairs to Stephanie. I said, hey, great news. Next Level Mastermind's coming back. I didn't propose a coaching offer. I proposed the Next Level Mastermind, and she's 100% all in. I'm going to go take a nap. I was exhausted. I went and I slept for probably 2 or 3 hours after that. So that's been my week. In a nutshell. It has been getting up and taking some steps that need to be taken, doing the things that are required, doing a few steps beyond what is required, but yet still not quite all of them, fully taken. It's just like, So let me go back to my outline here. I've explained why this episode exists, that this is simply an audio journal. It's unscripted, obviously. This is super personal. I'm not here to teach you anything. More than anything, I'm living up to my commitment. I told you I'd be here Monday morning with a new episode. I want to be a part of your weekly routine again, and I'm honored to be invited into your life. And sometimes I will bring this type of content, not for the sake of creating content, but for the sake of showing up and being a part of your life, and also sharing authentically what's a part of my life. Looking back, I will tell you, share part of my outline, share what PodFest was like this year. Overall impression, it was amazing. It was the best podcasting conference I've been to in probably a decade. Right around 2014, 2015 podcast movement, it felt like that. It felt like the early days when I was the director of podcasting for Blog World New Media Expo. It was like that. It felt like the old days of the pod camps that I used to go to. It felt like that. It had this amazing indie podcaster, solopreneur, small business owner, and also just podcast passionate hobbyist environment, community, family feel to it. What an incredible experience. It happened to be an opportunity for me to reconnect with Joanne Miller, Kevin Miller, Ashley Longston, and Jared Ongaza. Joanne is Dan Miller's wife. Ashley and Kevin and Jared are Dan Miller and Joanne's children, and they had been such a part of my life, as Dan Miller was such a close and dear friend and mentor in my life for so many years. And they had a meet and greet that took place a few hours before the Podcast Hall of Fame ceremony that inducted Dan Miller into the Podcast Hall of Fame posthumously, in honor of his legacy. And this meet and greet was almost like a memorial service that we never had back in 2 years ago. And so, wow, was it so wonderful to reconnect with them. I had an exchange with Dave Ramsey that literally brought me to tears. Not there in the room, but as I walked away and I reflected on it, something that Dave Ramsey said that literally brought tears to my eyes. Stephanie and I recorded a podcast episode where I shared with her more closer to the actual time frame. On Monday morning, the day after I got back, I reflected on this experience. If you want to hear that, and even when I recalled it and told the story, and you want to hear, you will hear where I'm like starting to tear up even again as I'm telling the story. It's episode 56 of Building a Life and Business Together. And you can find that over, do I have that URL? buildingalifeandbusinesstogether.com. Episode 56. It was recorded on January 19th. And you can hear even more about my experience with PodFest. It's buried deep in that episode, but I shared a lot with Stephanie there. And I also talk about in episode 56 of Building a Life and Business Together, just what it stirred up emotionally. It was just so powerful. It was such a homecoming for me. I did not recognize how much of a part of me I left behind when I made the decision to intentionally walk away from Podcast Answer Man. And so much of that came flooding back in rich and powerful and profound ways during PodFest. It felt so good to be in community, physically in the same space as my friends John Lee Dumas, Joel Comm, Paul Colligan, Dave Jackson, Daniel Lewis, and so many other people in this industry that I've known for years. Pat Flynn wasn't there physically. His wife had come down with the flu and had to cancel. But even during an experience in an Uber, we all FaceTimed Pat, and it was like he was there with us. And so, man, did it feel good to reconnect with such meaningful, close peers in this industry. And it feels so good to be back. But then, the internal cost of going there, not fully recovering, and then long days, long nights, high energy conversations, coming back, knowing that I had given way more than I had to give. But that being a part of my intention of going was giving. And give I did. I know I made such an impression. Not to make people think positively of me, but to actually have an impact in people's lives is what I mean. I made an impression in people's lives, not about how special I am, but I poured into people with what I had to give from anything that I had to offer in the well of my experience, and it was so great. Coming home to the inbox, I haven't hit inbox 0 since I've been back, and not for the lack of trying. As I look at it right here, there is 36 more emails in my inbox. My CRM is still overflowing with follow-ups, and there's still 200 more selfies. I've still got about 30 or 40 more business cards sitting here. It may be another month before I get all of it logged. Who knows? But I do have a new member in my Next Level Mastermind. I am going to be promoting my Next Level Mastermind to those who are on the entrepreneurial journey in this final week of January. See if we can't get 2 or 3 or 4 more people enrolled. That's going to be my focus. Podcasting A to Z, I'm thinking about changing the offer until I see a demand on the group side of it. Actually turning Podcasting A to Z as a 4-week group, not 4-week group coaching, but 4-week one-on-one experience with me. So if you're interested in that, email me for Podcasting A to Z one-on-one coaching. Just email me that if you're interested. Talk about the internal cost. Okay, returning home, the inbox, the cards, the selfies, the weight of now what, the A to Z decision. We talked about all of this. Gosh, we got all of this. So what's actually emerging, the Next Level Mastermind, the transition of Podcasting A to Z temporarily to a one-on-one coaching offer instead of a group coaching offer, the relational work ahead of me to establish such a meaningful connection with all of these people that have crossed my path, and to discern which one of these I'm committing to making sure that I recognize face to face when I see them in a hallway next time or at any event in the future. And working more on conversations instead of funnels. And where I am now, it's Sunday. It's now 1:12 p.m. I'm still not fully well. I've chosen rest where I've needed to, and I'm going to continue to choose rest. And I'm trusting the path. Even though the visibility ahead is not absolutely perfect, man, do I feel the opportunities humming. That I feel them calling me forth, and I am super excited to step into this as soon as I'm fully recovered. And that is what's going on in my world. I have no special call to action, but if anything in this episode has resonated with me, you like that? I'm not going to edit that out. If anything has resonated with you in this episode, I'd love to hear from you. My email address is cliff@cliffravenscraft.com. If it takes 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 or 7 days for me to hit reply and get back to you, please understand. I'm a little behind, but I will get back to you. I do email everyone who emails me, so I'd love to hear from you. And of course, if you are interested in a one-on-one podcasting A to Z, helping you get your podcast launched, or a one-on-one on podcast strategy, helping you figure out your direction moving forward with your content creation or business strategy, or if you are already in the thick of it and you'd like to be in a mastermind experience with me and this one other individual who are getting ready to fire the Next Level Mastermind back up starting in the first week in February. All you have to do is email me, cliff@cliffravenscraft.com. Until next time, I encourage you to take everything you do to the next level.
Podcast. It's a man.